Alright, so Gotham Knights gameplay reveal is up 13 minutes of brand new Red Hood and of course Nightwing gameplay showing the open world, some of the new mechanics, the combat style, and of course a ton of customization it seems, among many other things that we will check in this video. It definitely seems that Warner Bros. Games is doing something incredible, but there are some rough edges that we will also discuss in this video. Not fully yet convinced on the game, so still cautiously optimistic, but that's why in this video we'll break down everything we've seen in the new gameplay reveal, so let's begin. Now, combat wise, the gameplay has been looking pretty solid, of course expected to feel quite similar to the Arkham series if you play that, or the more recent Marvel Spider-Man, as in there's going to be a lot of one versus all kind of fighting, a lot of dodging and counterattacking being back, but each of these characters do have their own flavor with unique skills, abilities and gadgets. Like for example, we saw Nightwing. He is the more acrobatic type of character. He uses a pair of batons to deal damage obviously, and can quickly jump between targets and combo enemies, compared to, well, for example, Red Hood, who is a little bit more slow, doesn't use melee as much and relies more on his pistols to deal ranged damage, but is also a bit more brutal in the takedowns and his special abilities. And speaking of special abilities, we have seen at least a few of these. They seem to be castable from the mini menu on the bottom right corner of the screen, and you can seem to wear at least about 4 of these at any given time depending on the loadout. But in the case of Nightwing, we've seen the elemental shockwave ability, which interrupts enemies' attacks and also deals elemental status damage. The status we've seen in this case was the cryo effect, which, just like what the name implies, completely freezes an enemy and keeps him out of the fight for at least a few moments until the ice breaks. Red Hood also has a few of his own. Barrage was one of them, where he unleashes a flurry of armor-piercing bullets with his pistols into the enemy to deal very high damage to a single target. But we've also seen more AoE and more brutal-centric kind of takedowns, including one where he attaches explosives to his enemies, and then if you shoot them, you can detonate them for massive AoE damage, which is amazing against groups of enemies. And speaking of taking these enemies down, yes, takedowns are also a part of every hero skill set, and each one of these heroes has a unique type of takedown and finishing move. Successful attacks and dodges will build something called the momentum bar that you can see right here on the bottom corner of the screen, and if you fully fill these bars, you can then unleash your takedowns, very similar to Marvel Spider-Man, for example. Also, timing your attacks and combos will build it even faster, so there's also an element of strategy and skill when it comes to this, not just button mashing. Now, we've seen 2 types of silent attacks too, so we had ambush strikes and silent takedowns, with the ambush strikes being the faster ones, but the ones that also deal more noise. Meanwhile, the silent takedowns are obviously silent, take longer, but will not alert enemies as easily if you want to play fully stealthy. Now, in terms of enemies, I was a bit disappointed because we've only seen like human ones, but there was one interesting outlier, which was the Talon Gladiator, part of the Court of Owls, an engineered superhuman assassin that seems to be the gladiator type, as in they have high defenses, they wield a shield that can be used both offensively and defensively, and also other devastating attacks coming from the spiked hammers that they wield. One interesting thing about these enemies is that they seem to be capable of resurrecting in combat, or at the very least have some sort of second life ability, probably incorporating the soul energy that Red Hood also uses, since I think that Ra's al Ghul has a play in this at the very least. And speaking of Red Hood and soul energy, let's also talk about Traversal, because it's definitely interesting. So all knights get their own heroic ways of traversing Gotham City, but Red Hood's is the most interesting because it's a little bit more magical. So after being resurrected by Ra's al Ghul, he's now capable of using soul energy, which is why we've seen his mystical leap ability that he uses to traverse, basically creating mystical platforms to jump off and kinda go up into the air. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be useful at other kind of stuff as well, but he also gets to use grappling hooks. All of the other knights have their own as well, and this is usable to reach high up places or get on top of buildings. Nightwing's version was even more exciting. He has a glider called Flying Trapeze, and just like what the name implies, it's a glider, looks really awesome, and you can also use it to traverse a little bit further since it kind of like works a bit like a jet. Now the bat cycle was another way of traversing the street levels in the open world. All the Gotham Knights will get access to this, and as a matter of fact it's summonable from the bottom left corner of the screen. Seems to be tied to D-pad up or arrow up on the controller, so yeah, likely something that you can call at any given moment with any of the knights. And on a final note, with the traversal there's also the fast bat. This is basically your fast travel. Eventually we can unlock this and other various fast travel points in Gotham City, so you're likely going to use this to just go there really quickly, and this is the cutscene that's likely going to play. But speaking of the open world, let's talk about that. Let's also talk about our home base of operation called the Belfry. So this is basically our home. This is where we can take on missions, check out the suits we've unlocked, also craft gear and progress the main story. And we have a first look at the Bat computer. This is basically what's going to let you to check challenges, progress story missions, and also see the map of Gotham City. In this case, we've seen a number of really interesting icons. So 2 character icons over here at the top, likely indicating side missions for these specific characters, and maybe some more lore. I'm definitely expecting something along those lines, with also some special types of rewards. We've also seen these green icons, which most likely indicate fast travel points, since they seem to be the same color as the home base, and that's also a place where you can fast travel, so that's my expectation. We've also seen one of these white chests, which imply treasure hunts slash loot spots. This is an RPG at the end of the day, and also a lot of leveling and items will drop, so this is something that we're gonna actively take part in. And finally, an early story mission called the Powers Club, which takes you, I think, to the Court of Owls was the mission that was showcased throughout this video. The workbench was even more interesting though, another thing you can access at your base home. So in the gear department we have loadout, crafting, mods, and style, so you can craft your own gear, your own suits. We also have the materials right here that we can collect and then use to craft said gear, but we can also apply mods to these suits that we're taking, and then if we want to like play with different types of builds with the same character, there's also loadouts that you can save and quickly switch between for a lot of ease of use. And yeah, let's talk about that, because this is an RPG at the end of the day. We have seen that there's XP, that there's levels for these characters, which you then funnel into your ability systems. But let's also take a look at the suits. There's quite a number of them of different rarities, of course starting with the uncommon stock options, but then we also have legendary versions like the momentum ability suit that looks pretty dope. We also seen even higher qualities than this. In this case, heroic seems to be the highest, with the new knight suit right here, which seems to have the highest amount of mod slots of any other rarity. So compared to the epic that only has 3, the heroic has 6, so obviously something you'll want. And it seems that conditional stats is something that depends on the mods that you apply on this gear. Also, speaking of the builds, we can still colorize and choose the style of these suits. Totally awesome, with the customization still going on. I'm glad that it's still confirmed to be a thing once the game fully launches. Of course, all of these items and the XP needed is something that we get from completing missions and other open world events. In this case, we have seen a few criminal activities being showcased throughout the video, including an illegal shipment, which is basically a car chase. You chase a van filled with fleeing criminals, and if you stop them and defeat them, this will give you bonus materials as well as XP. Meanwhile, a rooftop fight was called illegal hack. It gave you even more XP for defeating these enemies, and also just one type of resource, but a lot more abundant. So it's likely that such information will be displayed on the map after these events are unlocked, or each type of crime activity will give you different types of rewards compared to other types. So yeah, this is something that's likely going to fall into different categories. For the moment, this is pretty much it with most of the details that I was able to spot. Totally let me know down below in the comments if there's anything that popped up for you, or if there's any other interesting detail that I have missed. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.